Scions 259. We are post Super Bowl. We are into the quietest part of the sports calendar, I guess, at this point. But college baseball comes back on Friday for Georgia Tech. We have Ben King back here from that team of his. That was he said 5 years playing, 4 years playing.
5 years, 5 years.
5 years of Tech baseball, only to be outdone by John Geezer's sixth year at the on the flats this year, but I guess fourth year playing, so he did take a year off. Uh, this is the Georgia Tech Baseball 2025 preview episode. We're going to do that up the top, and then we will roll through the rest of the week's news. We got Akshay here, we got Jack here. I am Jack Purdy. Let's quickly go through the 2024 baseball season, which was a 33-25 record for the Jackets, 12-12 ACC. Everything was highlighted by the fact that Drew Burress was on our team. He was our center fielder. That dude had 10 outfield assists. He had set the freshman homer record, as we noted before the show. Did have a home run taken away because we had a weird rain game canceled against Georgia that I was at, and I don't know why I went to that because that was just a terrible night to watch baseball when it came to the weather and Ben. The color of that game actually for me because I've pitched in terrible weather before and it sucks and you're like you just want your hands to not feel like they're about to fall off your arm. Uh, that was just already a tense moment because that was the first like big game of the season. Walk me through a terrible weather game in the cold and rain that ends up not counting.
Yeah, DB may be upset that that game ended up getting wiped because he lost the home run, but I certainly was not frustrated that that game ended up getting wiped from my stats because I mean that was just the most ridiculous. Like literally couldn't grip the ball. Your hand is
Right.
freezing. Um, you can't plant your feet at all on the wet mound. I mean, like just impossible to pitch in those
Yeah.
conditions. Um, I totally understand why we played. I mean, the coaches were just trying to get the game in, trying to give us an opportunity to play those guys at our home park, but that was a mess for sure. That was a memory in a bad type of way.
Let me ask one nerd question before we move on. Do the seams just like feel monotone with the rest of the ball when it gets that wet? Like, is there no amount of pressure you can put on any kind of pitch that gives you any sense of control at that point?
Yeah, I mean the leather just gets so slick, and then you add on the fact that like it's cold to begin with, so you already like pitching in the cold is is not fun. Like you have a hard
No.
time getting kind of tactile feel for the ball, and then you add in the fact that it's pouring rain, and you've just really kind of got no shot at all.
Yep. Yep. That makes sense. Uh, Throughout the season, Tech did have some very impressive. This was a very, like many other Tech teams, incredible wins and some like what the hell happened here's level things. Swept number 13 NC State, beat VT in a series, beat UVA in a series, won the Duke series. So that was wins against the number 13, 16, 10, and ninth ranked team in the countries, and then ended up going to Georgia for the regional. Which that last game, I know we kind of talked about this in a previous episode, but having to face Georgia at the very end of the season to hopefully get out of a regional, and then it goes to extra innings, and it is tense as hell in that game. Um, we kind of do a late season diagnosis, and I'll let the other two guys take this too. But would you feel like all in all, the season was a positive momentum kind of season, positive success, and it was the end of your career as well? So there was some maybe rose colored, like oh, if I get one last round right kind of thing. But how would you assess the entirety of 24 looking into 25?
Yeah, I would definitely look at 24 as a success. I think to look at it as a success, you kind of have to go back to 23 and the fact that that year we were, not at the level we wanted to be, didn't make the NCAA tournament for the first
Mm-hmm.
time that I had been in school at Georgia Tech, and really that I'd been following the program at all since I started getting recruited. And so and it was kind of a little bit of a rock and hard place team because it wasn't like there were a ton of young guys that were actively on that 2023 roster that were going to come up and be ready to go last year to play.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that the coaching staff did a really good job last year going out and finding some mature guys in the portal. And I think they would be kind of the first to tell you this. Like I've had this conversation with Ramsey before. We talked about it a little bit in the fall, and he said that he felt like that last year's team was kind of one of those like you're making a bunch of trades at the September trade deadline and calling up guys and trying to just piece together a roster to make a run at a postseason. With guys that were coming in, had 1 year of eligibility, having to play some a bunch of freshmen last year.
Right.
Um, and it was an incredibly up and down year. You mentioned, like we had that 6 game stretch where we got swept at North Carolina, come back at home and get swept by BC. And at that point, we were all in the locker room, like just thinking, man, this is going to be one of the worst seasons in the history of Georgia Tech baseball. And then we kind of ripped back and won several series in a row that nobody thought that we had any chance at. We beat UVA at UVA last year in a series. And that was like the first time that Georgia Tech had beaten UVA at UVA in baseball since I'm pretty sure since Brian O'Connor has been the head coach at UVA. Like that just
Yep.
hasn't been something that Georgia Tech has done, and only last year's team would have been a team that would have done that. So it was a fun group of guys, and I definitely think that we got things headed back in the right direction, got Georgia Tech back where it should be in the NCAA tournament, and I think if you look at the last 5 or 6 years, really since Coach Ramsey joined the program, I know a lot of people get frustrated over the fact that the program hadn't made it past a super regional, and I promise nobody wants to make it to a super regional and make it to Omaha worse than those guys that are in the locker room and the guys in the
Mhm.
coaching staff. But yeah, I kind of compare it to men's basketball, and if you go back to 2019, excluding the 2020 year that got canceled because of COVID, we've made it to a regional final. What is that? 4 out of the last 5 years. So that's like the round of 32 in March Madness.
Yeah,
I think if
right.
if Georgia Tech men's basketball was making it to the round of 32 every year in March Madness, like we would all be like, man, like I really wish we could break through to the Sweet 16. But I certainly don't think anybody would be pounding their head on the door like, oh my
Right.
gosh, we're so frustrated with the state of Georgia Tech men's basketball. So I think that one of those things when you have a program that's kind of knocking on the door, trying to make that next step, it can get a little frustrating, but you also have to step back and kind of realize and recognize that the program's in a pretty good spot.
Yep. Go, Jake.
That's a good way to put it. I think we try and step back and frame particularly women's volleyball in that same lens of like,
Yeah.
man, like they're in that 25 to 10 ranking week in and week out for basically every poll that's come out since the COVID-19 pandemic hit, right? And that's a dose of fresh air where it's like, dang, we do want to see them in the Elite Eight, but we can't be turning our nose up at round of 32 tournament appearances, Sweet 16 type equivalent. Like that's successful, and only one team's going to finish the season with a win anyways, right? Like that's just kind of the nature of the beast. So that's very good
Yeah.
perspective, and one that I think definitely applies here as well. Certainly entertaining. I mean, you get 50 cracks at delivering good memories, like more wins than losses, and some postseason theatrics. I mean, what more can you ask for from college athletics, right?
Georgia Tech, as evidenced by football, is the most entertaining school to watch play sports, apparently. So, uh, actually, any lingering thoughts before we move on?
Well, I was gonna pull up just at Jake's point. I was gonna try to pull up how many of these extra innings games were played last year. Certainly, I feel like during Ben's career, that had to have been a
Oh my
very
God.
a lot of heartburn medicine in our future, or I guess in our past, the last couple of
Cardiac
years, I bet.
cardiac jackets, baby. That's part of
That's
part of the
right.
way that
That's
we've
right.
played over the last since I've been associated with the program. I mean, make no bones about it. I mean, it has been an offensive led program, and we've struggled to pitch it, pretty consistently, like more consistently than we have pitched well. We've struggled to pitch, and so that kind of lends itself in baseball to some shoot. Like you truly were when you're in that dugout, the way things have been, the last 5 or 6 years, you never feel like a game is safe, but at the same time, you never feel like a game is out of reach with as good as our offenses have been. So
Right.
it does make for some exciting baseball.
And when you got Burress coming up at worst every 3 innings, it can hit a ball anywhere from 400 to 500 feet just on a whim. Like,
I mean,
that's, yeah.
with that kid, and I know we're going to get into talking about him a bunch, and he's kind of the linchpin of the future of the next couple years of
Yeah.
Georgia Tech baseball. I think you just got a game that people forget about, but that really kind of was like our season was hinging in the balance. Was the last game, the getaway game at Florida State last year in our last
Mm.
series before the ACC tournament. We went down there and we were one game above 500 in the ACC. So we went down there, no, and traditionally any team that finishes with a 500 record in ACC play is going to make a regional if you have a decent enough RPI with as
Yep.
strong as the ACC has been. So we're like, okay, we just got to go down there and win one game. Well, we get beat the first two games, and then we come out and we're back and forth game against FSU in that third game. Weather's coming in the area. I was actually pitching in the game. I came in and had a couple good innings, and then the game was tied. Let a guy on with a blue pit. I like end up balking in a run, like just most frustrating, weirdest run scored of my
Yeah.
life. And then it starts to rain, and so we think that the game is they post it pours the entire rest of the night in Tallahassee. We're afraid they're just going to cancel the game, send us because it was like the sixth or seventh inning
Right.
when it started raining, so the game could have been called complete, and it could have been just an FSU win. And we're like, all right, like we're not gonna make a regional. Our season's over. We end up getting to come back and play the next day, and Burress hits a two-run homer to put us ahead. We in like the bottom of the eighth inning, we go to the top of the ninth inning, or no, bottom of the seventh inning, and then we go to the top of the eighth inning. We blow the lead again, and to end that inning, they have a base hit to center field. A guy tries to score from second base, and Burris guns the guy out from center field at home. And then the next inning, we take the lead again, and then we finally finish the game. And it's
Yep.
just like that was a perfect microcosm of that season. It's just so
Right.
back and forth. Like we would get our backs all the way up against the wall, and then Drew Burress would do something crazy, and we would rally around him and win the
Yep.
game.
Yeah.
And just a crazy, crazy year.
Yeah, you had, I'll put the box score. Yeah, you had 2 1/3 innings, just that one earned run. A couple of Ks faced you and Cam Hill both faced 10 guys in that game. Then you had Brett Thomas and Riley Stanford finished it out. Uh, yeah, that's I had forgotten about this game, but as you were recalling it, like, oh yeah, right, this was just like another plot point, just the
Just
regularly
crazy.
wacky cardiac jacket season you're gonna get, which is there's 5 of these a year of just like what the hell is going on, kind of stuff. 2025. There's 31 new people on this team. It's a little bit more than just a trade deadline swap. It's like I don't know. I have no equivalent for this. This is just what happens this is what new transfer portal era is like. 10 of these guys are transfers and the rest are freshmen. This is the number 2 ranked freshman class according to Perfect Game, which ain't nothing. The notable returners, we mentioned Drew Burress is going to be back. John Giesler, he's his 6th year on campus, final year of eligibility. Parker Brocious is back. Von Lackey's back. Carson Kersey, is he back? And then Tyler Nacy's as well. Uh, Ben, I mainly want to get your reference on the number 21 jersey, which John has this year. Can you just explain kind of what the sentiment behind it and the importance is behind that jersey?
Yeah, absolutely. So I had the honor wearing number 21 last year. It's in honor of Georgia Tech Hall of Famer Jim Poole, who passed away uh, last fall, I think it was, or fall of 2023.
Great. Yeah.
And you want to talk about just the consummate Georgia Tech man was Jim Poole. I mean, he was an unbelievable pitcher at Georgia Tech. I'm pretty sure he was on the team for the run of like in the 80s under Jim Morris when they I know he was at least there for part of that, but when they won like back to back to back to back 4 in a row ACC championships, then went on to have a great career as a relief pitcher in the major leagues, and above all of that was just a tremendous human being, was always around at Georgia Tech, was very successful in business after his playing career, was always around and mentoring the players and guys around Georgia Tech. And even after he was diagnosed with ALS, would come around the field and was always just a source of encouragement to everyone on our team. So that's a really cool thing that was started a couple years ago. Jack Rubenstein did it 2 years ago and was the first guy to get to wear it. And I got to wear it last year, and then now Goose this year. And I think in that same vein, like Goose is the perfect guy to wear it this year. Like he's somebody that bleeds Georgia Tech through and through. The type of in today's day and age with the transfer portal. I mean, I like Goose and I both came in the same recruiting class. We're very close. We're both preferred walk-ons in baseball because you can only have 11.7 scholarships.
Mm.
And so the coaches gave us both an opportunity to come in. We're never promised really much playing time wise, but they were like, you can come in and we'll see what you can do. And both had, really honestly pretty similar trajectories of kind of working our way up. And it took until our, third, fourth years where we really got the opportunity to contribute on the field. And he's just done a great job of taking advantage of that. And, I mean, in today's day and age with the transfer portal, he could have taken off somewhere and probably gotten paid a pretty decent amount of
Yeah.
NIL money to go somewhere else and play in the SEC. And I don't think that thought has ever crossed through his head just because he loves Georgia Tech so much, loves our coaching staff so much, and wants to take this team, to the next level. So I'm really excited to see the year that he's going to have as a, second year captain for this team. He and I were the captains last year, and so to see him continue to grow into that role and lead this team, I'm really excited to see how that goes.
That's awesome. Love hearing that. Tech men loving tech. That's always down for that. Um, last thing on Burris, I want to note he's currently has the highest career slugging percentage of anyone that's played for the team, but he's only got 1 year on his belt, so we'll see if that holds up. He's at 821 right now, and that's the category of at least 200 at bats, career at bats. So, uh, I was told by someone who has been to practices that if it's a strike, he's kind of just hitting it very hard and very far right now, which it's kind of scary to think of a guy that was already one of the best center fielders in the country, and then it's like, oh, he's got to play again, and he gets better because he's still grow. It's just that stuff blows my mind. Um, take a stab at the pitchers we got here. We're going to take McKee's back, Carson Bauer's back, Mason Mattel's back, who had a big role in that final Georgia game. Riley Stanford, Kason Gaudette, Brett Barfield's back, and then we've got on the transfer side Sam Swigert, Caden Spivey, Porter Versema, Jake Leakey, Jalen Payton, Caden Campbell, and Brady Jones. I know I listed a lot of names, but give me your highlights of who's supposed to be the guys here this year, and then what, especially from these transfer guys, what are we getting from these guys?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the pitching staff, again, was kind of a little bit of the bugaboo of our team last year. Like when the pitching was good, we were going to be good. When the pitching struggled, the team struggled. But a lot of the guys that have thrown a lot of a lot of the innings off that team are no longer there. I mean, I led the team in appearances last year. Dawson Brown and Brett Thomas were two of our other most used relievers. And then Cam Jones and Aiden Finatieri, both in the starting rotation, are both gone. And so I think, kind of the bell cow of the rotation, a guy that you're needing to take a big step forward, and I think he's posed to, is Tate McKee. He's going to be the Friday night guy. Everybody in that locker room is kind of rallied around the idea that he's the ace and that they need him to be the ace. And, I got to know Tate really well last year, and continue to be close with him. And I really think he's poised to take a big step forward. He's got, you know, top line ACC Friday night starter stuff. And if you have games like he had last year where he pitched against Duke, he had a great outing. Against Pitt, he had a great outing. And there were starts where not just where he was having success, but where he was having like swing and miss success, striking out a lot of guys. If you can do that, if you've got that kind of stuff, you can be successful as a starting pitcher in the ACC. It's just a matter of consistently doing that, and it's so tough to be a freshman and be pitching big innings in the ACC. I mean, like you have a guy like Burris who comes in as a freshman and he just makes it look so easy. And so you're like, well, why can't these other guys do this? Why can't they come in and dominate the way that that DB's doing on the offensive side? And it's just not a fair expectation. So I'm really looking forward to seeing the type of year that Tate has this year. And then you got Carson Ballard, who went up. He was another just incredible story. Walked on the team 2 years ago, got cut, made the team last year, made a bunch of midweek starts for us. He went up to the Cape Cod League, which is the best summer league in college baseball, last summer, and had a great summer. Everything I've been hearing out of spring practice is that he's looked great. Was up to 95 this past weekend, and stuff is looking good. And he's a guy that's going to command the ball. He's not going to put guys on base for free. You got Mason Patel, who's just a bulldog. That's a guy that is going to go out there and compete for you. He did a great job in that regional final game. He started the game against Georgia, and then I came in after him, and we were able to kind of piece together a lead into late in the game, and then it kind of fell apart on us. But I think Mason's going to really be able to learn from that experience of pitching in that type of moment and being like, man, I've done this. Like this, no moment that I'm going to face this year is going to be bigger than this one, and I'm going to really be able to grow off of this. And then you got guys in that bullpen that really were able to get their kind of some of their first taste of real action last year. A guy like Riley Stanford, who has battled injuries in his time at Georgia Tech, but he's another one that's just as talented as anybody in the league. I mean, he's got a big league fastball, mid to upper 90s, and it's again like if he can command it, he's going to get guys out. Caden Gaudette's got a great breaking ball. I think he's going to be a big piece for them out of the pen. Same thing with Brett Barfield. We used him a lot last year as kind of a left-handed specialist. He's got a weird slot coming from the left side. It's really tough on hitters. And he's another guy that was a younger guy last year, and I think is going to continue to get more opportunities this year. So that's kind of from the returning side. And then I'm really excited to see what we get out of this freshman class and the transfers coming in on the pitching side. I think that Matt Taylor, our first year pitching coach last year, he's in his second year now. These are kind of the first, he and Jason Richmond, who's the director of pitching development, those guys are incredibly close. And I feel like they've got a really good game plan for how to get Georgia Tech pitching back to where Georgia Tech pitching needs to be for us, the program, to get to where it wants to be. And last year was kind of really the first year that they had a full summer transfer portal window. They were able to go out and recruit some of their own guys out of the high school window from last year. And so I'm really excited to see a lot of these guys. I think that a couple of those the transfer guys and a lot of the freshman guys, you're going to see a lot of stuff out of these guys. Like they're going to throw a lot harder than a lot of our pitchers did last year. It's going to look more impressive when the ball is coming out of their hand, and it's really just going to be a matter of, can they command it? Can they get the ball in the zone? That was 2 years ago. We threw slow and we didn't throw strikes, so that was a really bad combination.
That usually results in runs. Yeah,
you said it, not me.
Yeah. So that was not great. Last year, we threw slow and gave up home runs, but we didn't walk as many people, which was a win. That was something that we sat down with Matt at the beginning of the year, and we said, like, okay, and he used this analogy of like the Detroit Lions when Dan Campbell came in, that they sat down and they were like, okay, we're the worst team in the league. Let's pick one thing that we can not be the worst at, and that's what we're going to start with. And I forget what their thing was. It was something on the defensive side of the ball. And so last year, our thing as a pitching staff was, we are not going to be the last team in the ACC in walks this year, because we had like 3 or 4 years in a row we had walked the most guys in the ACC, and that was just driving everybody crazy. And so last year we didn't do that. We did give up a lot of home runs, and so there's a lot of progress to be made on the pitching side. But I think that now you're taking the step forward where you've got guys that, if they can control the zone, they've got the stuff to really be really solid ACC level pitchers. And so I'm really excited to see what that pitching staff looks like this year, and what Matt and Richmond have cooked up with those guys, and what they're able to do.
It's probably not the fairest comp, but dare I say the last most successful Georgia Tech pitching staff would be the 2019 staff. Obviously, Connor Thomas and Xavier Curry, huge part of that. But like, we saw that paired with a lineup that arguably has been pretty consistent in the meantime. And I mean, you said it earlier, still getting to regional final games with where you guys have been. I mean, the argument there, at least in my head, is get some improvement there, and hey, the ceiling looks a lot more like an Omaha than a scrapping for 500 in the ACC type of
telling
team.
Me. I mean, and here's the thing. I mean, like, I think if you go back and look at the last 5 or 6 years, even of the pitching staff, like, there's just a lot of stuff that people just don't know, like just cruddy luck of injuries, of guys just having stuff off the field, guys that we were really counting on to be big time pitchers, and it just hasn't. Guys that have gone on now to professional baseball and have had a ton of success and are like knocking on the door of making it to the big leagues, and that they just weren't able to. It never materialized at Georgia Tech. I mean, even you go back and look at that 2019 team that you just mentioned. I mean, you had Connor Thomas was really the only guy on that team that was healthy the entirety of that year. And you got to the regional, he was the only one that was pitching. You had Brant Purdy was on that team, who pitched in the playoffs for the Detroit Tigers last year. Xavier Curry is a big leaguer, and he was hurt for a lot of that year. Like, just think about what that team would have been if those two guys could have stayed healthy, and you make it to a regional. Then you could have come back through even after they
Yep.
they lost that game on the heartbreaking grand slam, you could have come back
Yeah.
through the losers bracket because you'd had enough pitching. And there's so many
Yep.
different guys, so many stories like that throughout my time at Georgia Tech that most people just don't know about. And then it's just
Yep.
like it's just been unfortunate. And there's really not much else, you know, you don't want to be making excuses, but there's at a certain point there's not much else you can say. Like when you just have so much bad luck of guys that just for whatever reason it just they had all the talent in the world, it just didn't work out.
Yep.
And so, you know, like that's got to turn at some point. Like
Yeah.
that flip has got to switch. And I think they've got the right guys in there right now. I think they've got a good group. I think they got a great coach. I know they've got a great coaching staff, and especially led by Coach Hall. I mean, when you've got a guy that's seen as much baseball and weathered as many storms as he has,
Yep.
it just you can't speak to how valuable that is to have a hand like that steering the wheel of a program.
Yeah, that should go a long way. I'll note just a couple other notes on these two guys. So Drew Rogers, new catcher, he's number 23rd overall, just recruiting the country per perfect game. Number 3 catcher in the country. Catcher U stays catcher U, I suppose. Connor Shows and Alex Hernandez are both listed as two-way guys, according to the team. They're the 83rd and 96th overall recruits, respectively. Quickly, just like 1 minute here, like any insight on what it's like being a two-way player in baseball in college baseball? I know you weren't going two ways, but watching two-way guys go, how different is it to play like that?
Incredibly hard. I mean, like I don't know how those guys do it, honestly. Like having been a two-way guy in high school, and then like how little prep there was, just even scouting wise in high school, but how
Mhm.
difficult it was to do both. And then you get to college and you see all the work that guys were doing on the offensive side and on the pitching side. I mean, my hat's off to anybody that's able to do that. Jackson Finley was a great
Yep.
came into my class and was a great two-way player for us. And we called him, his nickname was Fawn, Fon, for freak of nature. It truly was, but like that's the only way I know that like somebody could be able to do that is like if you're a freak of nature, like a
Yep.
Jackson Finley, a Jack Caglione, who's one of the best guys that's ever done it. You just got to be a tremendous athlete to be able to do that.
Hey, Ben, I got a question because you got me thinking about two-way players, and I naturally go to think of Tristan English because that just dates my time in which I was watching literally every single
Forgot
baseball
about that
game for
guy.
4 straight years. Um, are there people who you hear like, this is an aside, not analytical, like their walk-up music, and you're like, by God, that's Wade Bailey's music, or like, do you have that kind of association? Because you say these names, and the first thing I think of is their walk-up music, maybe even more so than the stats. But does that leak over into the dugout? I've always
Yeah,
wanted to know.
no, for sure. Kevin Parada a couple years ago when he had his draft year, I forget it was 2021 or 2022, one of those years, and he walked up to "God's Gonna Cut You Down" by Johnny Cash,
Yep.
and every
Yep.
time it seemed like every time late in the game there'd be guys on base, and the first chord of that song would hit, and we would all just be like, "All right, you better buckle up, buddy, because you got KP coming to plate now, you're in
Yep.
trouble."
That's
But
awesome.
that's the one that really sticks out for me.
I
Yep.
love that. I love that. Go ahead.
That's a good one for that too. Yeah.
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 Maybe we'll
Sorry.
do Scion's walk-up songs for one episode. We'll think about it. I don't know. It'd be funny. Anyways,
For me to go get dusted in a master swim meet? Yeah, okay, Jack.
yeah, there you go. There you go.
No.
Other guys, transfer-wise, Kyle Lodice coming in at shortstop from Augusta University. Kent Schmidt, first baseman from Georgia Southern. Nathan Waugh, who's a catcher / DH from Cornell. He's got an active 42 game on base streak that dates to 2023, which means he got on base every game he played for Cornell last year, which apparently was all they played 38 games. So
Professional hitter.
that seems
Professional hitter.
that man belongs in the 2002 Oakland Athletics. We mentioned Sam Swigert. He came from the Citadel. Caden Spivey's from Notre Dame. Porter Burson was also from Southern, so we got a couple guys from there, as long as Jalen Payton. Any last notes, Ben, on just who we got coming in, position player guys, or just what you kind of shifting towards like season expectations before we get to the schedule, like what this group can do when it's all said and done.
Yeah, I think of that group you just named, the guys that I'm really excited to see are I'm excited to see Kyle Lodice. I think you've got him probably penciled in to be your everyday shortstop. Kent Schmidt, I think, is going to be your everyday first baseman. And then I think that Nathan Waugh is probably going to get a lot of opportunities at DH. I think those three guys are going to be really big pieces offensively. A lot of those pitching staff guys, like those guys are all going to get a ton of opportunities just because the pitching staff is so wide open.
Yeah.
You know, I think that expectations for this team, like I really don't know because I'm not around them every single day. I know that from what I've talked to the guys that I know from last year, and specifically talking like to Drew Burress, he is very optimistic, just even in terms of like the culture of the team. He really feels like that everybody's pulling in the same direction right now. That there's a belief on the team that they can be a great team this year, and that's really the first big step that you got to overcome. You got to believe that you can be able to go out there and win games before you can actually do it. So I think the sky's the limit for this team, and I'm pumped to watch them play.
Yeah, I can't wait. This is gonna be fantastic. Year 32 of Danny Hall, as we mentioned, or Jake was telling us before, and it's somewhere in the 13 to 50% total wins of all the wins that have happened at Tech, dating back to the team's inception in the early 1900s. I forgot if it reached the 1800s or not.
And
but-
all the other sports,
And all the other-
sports, not
yeah.
just baseball.
Yeah, stuff's
If you
crazy.
include baseball, it's probably even more. But
if you paid attention last year or the year before, you may have noticed that he was listed as the most winningest coach in college baseball, the active coach. That's no longer the case because Paul Maneri is now back in college baseball at South Carolina and has about 100 more wins than Danny Hall has. So unless somehow they add 50 games to the schedule and Tech wins them all, he ain't catching him this year. So, or he just coaches one more year. I don't know. We'll see. Hopefully Danny gets a good exit whenever that time comes. I'm not going to do a full ceremonial reading of the schedule, as is our tradition, because there's too many baseball games. Jake, before I read the ACC opponents, what do you got?
I was going to say, we're going to go right into the ACC opponents. I don't want to let it be missed that quietly decent non-con schedule. Old Dominion at 72 in the Massey to come into the year. The Massey rating is basically a bit of a black box, but he does the helpful thing of preseason rating all the teams top to bottom. So we go with what we have. Obviously not a lot of top 25, so that would have an Old Dominion on them, but quietly a really solid start to the year. Of course, early midweek against Georgia Southern is always a classic fixture of the schedule, going down to Statesboro on the road there. But I do want to say, if you're looking to get out to the ballpark for like this weekend, Old Dominion, pretty good start. The interesting Sun Belt. That's a really deep mid-major league there. So just something to flag. Wouldn't want to completely skip over it, of course.
So
with them coming into the building.
Justin Verlander's alma mater, Old Dominion. That's where he played.
Yeah, very good point. Jack,
Yes.
ACC wise though, what do we got?
ACC. We got obviously a bit balance of at home and on the road series. We go to Virginia Tech. We host Pitt. We go to Notre Dame. Host Clemson. Go to Stanford. Host Cal. Go to Miami. Host Virginia. Then Louisville, and then go to Duke. All in that order in the season. Ben, you're as experienced as any of us, considering me, Jake, and Akshay have a combined 0 ACC baseball games under our belt. Compared to just what obviously Stanford and Cal is going to be a brand new challenge that we haven't had before. That'll be a challenge for them as well, having to fly way too many miles to play a conference game. When you saw this schedule land, what were your initial thoughts? How do you feel about the chances of getting through this on the plus side of 500?
I think it's a favorable schedule. If you miss North Carolina, you miss Florida State, you miss Clemson. We do play Clemson, I think, but it's at home.
At Tech.
Clemson's at home.
Yeah.
UVA, you play UVA at home as well. Those are probably two of the top teams that you're looking at coming into the year. You miss Wake Forest, who's another, really a lot of those teams that are really top heavy in the league.
We're just generally avoiding the state of North Carolina, which is just a good thing, no matter what the sport is.
Right.
Quietly in there too, getting Louisville in our building feels big.
Yeah.
I know that's a
season.
program that's had some of that, like
yeah,
they'll be back after a down year type of voodoo. But
yes. So I definitely think it's the kind of schedule that lines up that if things go according to plan, that the team could have a really good year this year.
Akshay, sorry, I've left you hanging for about 20 minutes now.
Well,
this is something I think you can contribute on.
Well, number one, I really did think Jake was about to read the entire schedule when he started with Old Dominion, so I'm kind of disappointed that he didn't. But number two, this like Stanford Cal swing is actually it's a lot worse when you look at it on a calendar, because they'll play 3 games in a weekend at Stanford, then with the last one being like Sunday at 4 p.m. Pacific. I'm assuming all these are Pacific times. Or no, these should be Eastern.
Yeah,
right?
that'd be a 1 o'clock local in that case. Yep.
Anyway, still, they'll finish that up at like 4 p.m. Pacific, I guess. And then they'll fly back to Atlanta and play a game in Atlanta versus Auburn on Tuesday on 2 days rest and jet lag at 6 p.m. And then they'll play a 3 game set versus Cal. They'll go to Truist Park to play Georgia.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
Then they'll go down to Miami the next at the end of that next week. So you're looking at this
And oh, hold on. Then they get a trip back to Auburn, and then they get Virginia at home. That's 4 weeks of very good baseball,
Yeah.
or we hope very good baseball.
very good baseball, but also possibly the worst setup travel schedule possible, especially going West Coast, East Coast, whatever you want to call Florida, in
And they
a
got to
three
commute all the
game
way
or 3 week
OTP to
set.
Truist Park.
Oh my,
Just
that's
kidding.
the worst one of all.
I'm so
them.
excited for that game. By the way, one of my favorite sports memories from Georgia Tech athletics is that 2019 game. Oh my gosh, I think Court Rodick got the start. At just about every guy up and down the lineup had some sort of incredible hit. You had just the back and forth 20,000 people. That's holy cow. I feel like I've been
Yeah,
trying to
tell
catch
me
that
about
high
it.
for 6 years.
Tech's been playing Georgia at the Brave Stadium like since I was a little kid. Like they used to play at Turner
Yeah.
Field, and so when I got started getting recruited by Georgia Tech, I was like, oh, like I'm gonna get to play at the Brave Stadium. Like that's gonna be so cool. And then literally like the 5 year stretch that they
Right.
stopped playing either at Turner Field or then Truist, and we moved to Coolray was the 5 years that I was in college, and now they're moving the game back to Truist. So I'm a little salty that I never got to play at Truist, but
You should
I am
ask him. You should ask him to
fan.
let you do a bullpen session for that during that
Yeah, no,
beforehand or
let me
something.
tag along. Let me be
Yeah.
the Make-A-Wish kid and tag along for the game at Truist.
You should absolutely get that. That'd be hilarious.
This actually raises a good point, by the way, and maybe my memory is failing me on this one, but they've gone back to the single game rivalry format for this year, right?
Yeah.
But what are your
20
thoughts on that versus doing a 3 game home away in the neutral site?
I mean, I think the 3 game was cool. I personally probably would be willing to give up the 3 game set to do the 1 game at Truist. I just think that that's like such a cool tradition that the Coolray game was cool, but it's just not the same.
Right.
Like I would almost rather instead of the Coolray game just play another game at one of the home stadiums because I will say that giving up the home stadium games is a little bit of a
Yeah.
bummer because that's always and that's a big part of the reason why we tried to play that rain game at home last year at Rush
Yeah.
Chandler. It's just
Yeah.
because that's always the best crowd of the year for us. It actually is
Yeah.
funny, like at Georgia, it normally falls on their spring break, so it normally is like
It
the
sucks.
best crowd at Foley Field in Athens that I ever saw was, obviously the regional adds to that, but that crowd at the regional was way different than any crowd in a regular season game ever was.
Mm.
Yeah.
But I will miss us having that game to play against them at Rush Chandler. But I personally think it's worth giving up to get to play at Truist. I think that's just such a cool
Yeah.
opportunity for both all the guys on both of those teams. Because it's really a place where anybody that grew up in the Southeast, wants to play at the Brave Stadium. So that's a really cool opportunity.
Yeah. I cannot wait to be at finally go to that game. just in general. And hopefully get a shot to see their press box too. That'll be fun. Sit in Dave O'Brien's seat. Um. Lastly, ACC tournament format has changed. The three team pod thing is gone. You don't have to pitch in a meaningless third game anymore. That does nothing except just add innings that no one asked for in the middle of the weekdays in Charlotte or whatever. I assume Ben, when you heard this, was like, finally enough of this crap.
Yeah, that was another one that I was like, really, we couldn't have implemented this when I was still there because like literally the last 2 years we've played in a lame duck game after we lost our first pool play game,
Right.
and both years it's been against UVA, and they are like UVA is like the poster child. Like I think of them as like almost like an Alabama under Nick Saban type of
Mm,
baseball program where they're just like they do everything right. They're going to play every single game like it's like we all should. Like it's a great it is a great program. They do things right over there. But we've just both the last 2 years have played in that lame duck game against UVA and just gotten absolutely shellacked. And it's just the worst feeling in the world because you're like,
yeah.
this game literally means nothing. and we're just getting destroyed. Like, please let us get back on the bus and go home.
Yeah.
So I definitely
Yeah.
think that's
Yeah.
a good move by the league to change that format up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
six.
and
Go
then
ahead.
you're not taking an extra loss too if you're a bubble team like
Right.
that. I mean, imagine being, I think it was Pitt 2, 3 years ago, I think went 0-2 and just completely fell straight off of having a shot. A team like
We were
that
afraid
gets,
that was going to happen to us last year. Like there
That
was,
makes sense. Yeah.
we were 15-15 in the league going into the ACC tournament, and then we
yeah,
lost that first game to FSU. That was like the decide to go to bracket play, and then we played
yeah,
that next day against UVA and just didn't come out ready to play, and they shellacked us. And a lot of it, like I got back on the bus and I was like, man, like that may have just been my last baseball game, and like that could have been it right
Yeah.
there.
yeah.
So yeah, I definitely think
So
it's a smart move by the league to go to the single elimination format.
it'll be 16 teams. So what did we say last week? That's not that's is that everyone in the conference? This the Syracuse and SMU
Yep.
don't have baseball. So
Yep.
this does include everyone. Everyone is going to Charlotte still. 4 teams get double buys, 4 get single buys. So it's basically how basketball works, where you're just trying to move up far enough in the standings to just have more off days. Uh, and first pitch is on Friday against Old Dominion. There's a scarf you can get because baseball does happen in the winter in college baseball, unlike the other, like MLB and stuff like that. So, yeah, holy cow, we're here. All right, Jake, you got one trivia bit before we say bye to Ben?
Yeah, I'll hop on that. So I could change this up, but it's a stat that I've been sitting on for a little bit of time. All time, Georgia Tech has had quite a successful baseball team. Accordingly, most coaches, particularly those that have coached more than about a year worth of games, have in fact finished with a positive run differential. However, one notable name has not. Can you guys guess which Georgia Tech coach has a negative all-time run differential?
John Heisman.
That's a good guess. I would say it's the other football coach who coached baseball at Georgia Tech, but
Bobby Dodd. Was it
Bobby
him?
Dodd has a
yes,
negative differential. Wow.
Bobby Dodd went 43, 64, and 2 and finished with a negative 166 differential per my database.
Okay.
So that's fun. An average of negative 1.52 runs per game that he coached. At the opposite end of that runs per game spectrum, do you know which Georgia Tech coach has finished his career with the all-time highest average run differential per game?
You said finished their career, implying
It
this
can't be
is not
Danny.
Danny. Uh,
Danny's in second.
okay.
Is it actually Heisman? Because I think that would be hilarious.
No, that'd be pretty funny, but he was just a pedestrian 1.22 runs per game.
Is it Jim
Shame.
Morris?
It was indeed
There we go.
Jim Morris finished with an average of 284 runs more than his opponents in games he coached. Overall, Georgia Tech has outscored its opponents by an average 1.63 runs per game. So, just got to get more runs than the other team, right? That's the goal at the end of the day. Other ones that pop out, like I said, Danny Hall at a 2.28 there. All time, he does have the highest run differential. Sheer number of games certainly helps him out there.
Yep.
But many, many thousands more than the opponents have scored under his watch for both him and Jim Morris. But
Yep.
Coaching for 3 decades will hopefully do that.
That'll do.
But,
That'll do.
yeah.
Well, here we go. Year
All right.
32 with Danny Hall. Ben, thank you so much for hanging out with us. Just giving us all the insight we definitely did not have on this team. So hopefully we'll see you around the ballpark. Enjoy baseball season.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.
Of course. Great having you.
All right. What we got? Section 103? Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, section 103. Hats. That's the direction I've been given as hats. Brent Key hats, in fact, in particular. You can find them as well as other fine hats at section103.com. I believe everything's back in stock, Jack.
Everything's
Is
in
that
stock. If
that's the
it's
scuttlebutt?
yeah,
Yeah.
if it's on the website, you can buy it right now.
There you go. One thing that I have had on my radar is a Section 103 sticker. I've got a classic one of those like water bottles that just has all the stickers from like the last 8 years of my life stuck to it. And I'm in the market for a Section 103 logo sticker. They have those as well. Check them out, section103.com, and at section103 on Twitter, I guess, too. Use your code FTRS, 10% off. You can also, as always, get free shipping on orders over $80. Jack, back to you. I guess Akshay's here too. We
Akshay,
could get his thoughts too.
Akshay, I'll let you just start talking about women's basketball, which we beat SMU 70-69, and we beat Boston College 71-51 very handedly, with a 23-point game from Kara Dunn and a double-double from Zoe Smith. That SMU game, I assume, is going to be more the talk here with just how weird of a game that was and how we barely got that win.
Look, this game almost had an all-time Atlanta sports ending. And it was just so dumb by the end. I think before the game, we clocked that SMU had it was like an 87. They were the 87th ranked team in,
Torvik, yeah.
Was it Torvik? Yeah,
Yeah, it was
Park
Torvik, yeah.
Which Tech is like high 20s, if not in the
Teens, they're in the
top
teens.
15.
Yeah, they're in the teens, yeah.
So it's a pretty sizable gap. And at this point, you're not, excuse me, you're not even looking at projections. You're looking at raw performance, or adjusted performance, technically. Anyway, not important. So this just ends up being like this should never have been close, right?
No.
Like this should never have been close. And I think that's something that you saw in the post game too. And you mentioned this in your recap, and you mentioned this when we were hanging out this past weekend, which yes, listeners, occasionally we do hang out outside of recording this podcast, surprisingly. It's like they were like Nell Fortner was not happy with this performance. There's no reason
Not at
that
all.
you should be allowing you should have let this game get this close, and it was very nearly in like just the stupidest possible ending because Tech gets a foul to go up to take free throws to go up 70-68.
Yep.
After what was it with like a full second left on the clock or 1.3?
Yeah, 1.2. Yeah, but SMU could have taken the final shot with 30.5 seconds left in a 68-68 game, missed the bucket, but then shoot with like 3 seconds left, missed the bucket, and still foul Zoe Smith with the second left as she's going for the rebound and about to fall out of bounds too. Like if they didn't touch her, she might just be out of bounds. And they all Tech did have a timeout, so they could have at least advanced the ball if they got full possession. But still, it's like they had a shot to keep the ball away from Tech entirely and didn't do it.
So Tech makes the two free throws, right? And then you're like, okay, well, job done, right? But there's still like a second and a half to burn off the clock.
Yep.
As we near the end of this game. And then Tech does the most improbable thing on the ensuing SMU possession after they advance the ball with a timeout, which is Tony Morgan fouls the SMU player with 0.6 left on the clock.
Yep.
And you're looking at this and the ensuing two free throws as oh my Lord, what is going on? And then SMU, in equal measure, does the most improbable thing, makes the first shot, and then misses the second.
Yep.
Or I think I have them flipped. I think they missed the first one and made the second.
No, you're right. You're right. Yeah, they made the first.
Well, it would have been more dramatic that if they made the first and missed the second, and then Tech escapes with a 70-69 victory. But man, like trying to figure out what had happened because I was out and couldn't watch this game, but like trying to figure out what happened at the end and then watching a little bit of it back, especially the late game sequence. Like, what are we doing, man?
Yeah, that was a little wild there at the end. Ultimately, SMU had kind of dictated the pace of this game. They had been on a 7-game losing streak, and I had in my head, I'm like, okay, they might be due for one here just because play enough games, you eventually win one in the course of ACC play, just general conference play, and they're not so bad to actually just draw a donut in the season. And they made it tough. They made it tough. They are not an oversized kind of team necessarily, but they made up for it in speed, and we were not there to match that kind of speed.
It's interesting because when we talked about this game this weekend, and also when we talked about this SMU team at the beginning of the year, when we recapped or previewed, not even recap, we recapped this 2024 seasons or 2023 seasons for these teams, and then looked ahead the conference newcomers, and then looked ahead to 24. I think we were like, okay, well, like women's volleyball SMU could make a little noise. Women's
Mhm.
basketball, SMU was a tournament bubble team, or I think they made the tournament outright last year. It's like they could be a factor in women's basketball too. And just looking at the gap in the standings there, it's interesting how that has unfolded, and maybe there's some like root causing that we could do at another time in another place.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's just super weird game. And I think Jake had the best take on this again when we were talking about it, is just you gotta win your clunkers
Yep.
at the end of the day.
Yep.
Thankfully,
You
it shows up as a win on the record book, so that's the important part there. The Boston College game, Boston College shot like 16% in the first half, and that about did them in. Even if they did have a good third quarter, but that gap was way too much, and Tech was playing much more cohesive, much more fundamentally sound basketball than they did against SMU. So that was a win your clunker. Very simply, they got the job done, and so that's good to see. Uh, Next up, they play Thursday at Clemson, and then they play Sunday home. This is a noon start, not their usual 2 o'clock start. Versus Wake Forest. I believe there's a deal for like middle school teams. If you're in Atlanta, you get to go for free or something like that. Just check what their messaging is on that because I know they have some sort of deal out for teams.
Before we move on to the men's team, a note on this part of the schedule. I kind of agree, and I think we've talked about this before too, but I agree with what someone on the ACC network broadcast for, oh my God, who they play before SMU. Whoever it was that they beat before SMU, that said, like, this is the softer part of the schedule
Yep,
before
it
they
is.
get into March.
It
And I
is.
think
Yep.
we've talking about that a lot as we look towards the like that 5 game run into the ACC tournament, which has, some of the toughest competition in the nation, not just in the ACC, right? So these fixtures versus a Clemson versus a Wake Forest, you have to take these going away, well, in one case, literally going away, and then the
Yep.
other one at home, especially a Wake Forest team that I mean, I have many memories of Wake Forest giving Tech trouble under Nell Fortner. So,
Yep.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. Those that we've
so
Well,
yeah.
they play a lot of that scrappy, defensey type ball that, I mean, limited possessions, keep games close late. That you just got to kind of capitalize when you can here, especially if this team can be a little more high octane. I mean, kind of dovetails into some of the questions we've had of late about them, but
Yeah. I think it'll be fine. We're in good shape. They did slip back to 19th in the rankings despite not losing any games, but I guess that SMU performance did them in a little bit. I'm not too sure
Yep.
what else happened in the nation to cause someone to jump us or something like that, but nonetheless, we are
yeah, I
still
mean, speaking about
good.
women's basketball this weekend, it was a pretty great weekend for like high profile televised
That
college
is true. There were
basketball,
some very good games
especially in
this
the
week.
SEC. That Texas South Carolina game, I caught a good chunk of that, and that
Yeah.
was a feral atmosphere. I think that was in Austin. It was a
Oh
feral
boy.
atmosphere, and Texas won. And it was a 2-4 game, and I just did not realize that Texas was that good at women's basketball this year.
They just
Absurd game.
that they
Find
are.
a replay of it. It was great. Like
Big
South
reason why
Carolina was down like 10 points at the half.
amazing. They in fact can lose. Big thing here just in general, win these clunkers so that we don't lose any so that we don't get out of our so we don't ruin our shots at hosting tournament games. That's not a guarantee by any stretch of the imagination, but Tech with enough
yeah,
wins could
I'd
get
say
there.
we're on the outside looking in for that at this
Yeah.
point.
Close but not there yet. Men's
But definitely
basketball.
on the inside looking out for the tournament selection
Yes,
writ large.
correct.
So
No, we
that
are
that
we're
we
at
take
this
that.
we're
We'll
at
take
20
that.
wins. This is as early as we've gotten to 20 wins in many years. So got that going for us. Men's basketball. After coming off that very good win against Louisville at home, they followed it up with predictably another wild late night win at Clemson, 89-86 in triple overtime. I was very asleep because this game started at 9 o'clock and ended, as far as I know, at 2 a.m. I don't know when this game ended.
I
This
passed
is
out
a
too. I'm going to be real honest.
Yeah, very few people I think watched this game, and then they lost to Virginia 75-61, which I don't think we really need to talk much
Even when
about.
Virginia is terrible, we just cannot beat them.
No, that's just
It-
that.
The last time Georgia Tech beat Virginia, Brian Gregory was still the coach of this dang team.
Good Lord, my goodness.
and there's like a 24-point performance from Tech in there somewhere. In that series.
Oh
Yeah.
God.
Anyway,
Anyways,
the thing that I want to talk about versus Clemson, and this is not really like a long conversation. This is mainly just a meme. is that this is a Brad Brownell masterclass of it's like one of the greatest of the genre. Just a not so great like the year they made like this they made like a pretty decent run in the tournament last year too, right? Like
Wasn't it like an Elite Eight run?
yeah, and to just yes, this goes to 3 OT, and at a certain point you throw the win probability meter out the window. Even the win probability meter says it's 50% at the start of OT, so like whatever. But man, like if you think like there's being untrustworthy and unable to like really put your faith in Georgia Tech basketball, and then there's whatever Brad Bunnell has been cooking up at Clemson for the past like decade and a half. It's crazy.
Yeah, it just took a Duncan a Powell missed three, followed up his own three with a last second putback to actually get us into overtime in the first place, and then went through the triple overtimes and got it done. Just my goodness, that was the kind of like gutsy stuff. Robert Pensa put up a good article on our website if you want to check that out about just this is the kind of basketball we like that, especially from that up to leading up to Louisville stretch in this Clemson game was like that. Okay, we can get behind this kind of basketball, even if they are playing six guys because they have six healthy guys on this roster right now. Seven, at least this is good. I wonder if that UVA. I didn't catch this UVA performance, but I'm guessing also just an element of like they've been playing six guys for 2.5, 3 weeks now. Like eventually something's gonna fall. You just can't maintain that for that long, uh, at all. So
This was a weird thing that I remember coming up during that cursed Atlanta United season back in like 2022. It's like,
mm,
how do so many guys get hurt at the same time? Like,
right,
yes, at a
yeah,
level it's statistics. But it's that's a lot. I mean, if you're playing a 7-man rotation because you are forced to and not because you like want to, that is a
yeah.
weird
Just to say,
position to be in.
there are technically more guys like the walk-ons are technically still healthy and stuff like that. But again, like these are guys that are filling in the roster for
Yeah,
emergency
you generally don't
situations.
want to have to dress those guys.
Yeah, they're not going to play even in this situation. According to Damon's ACC media call today, everyone that's been hurt is still hurt. So no updates. Probably not going to get anyone new for Wednesday's game, which talked about Stanford earlier. They are making their McCamish Pavilion ACC debut at the very least at 7 o'clock Wednesday night, and then Cal comes to town at 4 o'clock. So if you want to see some West Coast basketball, that there's your chance. Softball. Okay, we kind of did forget to put this in the outline, so this might not be as in depth as we want
We're
it to be.
doing it on the fly.
Yes. Buzz Classic. We went 4-1 over the weekend. Overall, I'd call this a success. No crazy blemishes here. Beat Belmont 1-0, lost to EKU 6-3, and then won our next three games over Western Kentucky and Eastern Kentucky by an average of 1.3 runs. And had two walk-offs in the process here, but stellar pitching. Two shutouts in this series, and then games of 3 runs allowed, 1 run allowed, and 2 runs allowed otherwise. So in general, I think this is what you want to see for an opening weekend.
Yeah, and I'll note that Georgia Tech, the numbers kind of back it up from what we've got so far. Massey has added a composite to his site. We like this a lot. The two components of the composite are just Massey and Nolan's Nolan's ELO statistic. But they liked it. Tech's up 12 points from it. 4-1 starts about kind of what we penciled in as being like, hey, that's good. Let's shoot for that. I think the way the wins broke out, Belmont, Western Kentucky, no shade to them, but I think I kind of hoped for a 3-0 set there and get at least one against EKU, come out 4-1. I think 5-0 in 3 days is unrealistic, but
That's a lot. That's a lot.
4-1, we take that high level stats kind of on the weekend as a whole. Georgia Tech hit 254 and opponents hit 217 against him. I like where that opponent number is at. Tech's number feels a little bit low considering mid-major, but and the weather was pretty decent. It wasn't particularly
Yeah, it was
cold and rainy.
It's a great weekend.
It's generally pretty nice around here in Atlanta. Pitching side, opponents ERA 279, Tech's ERA a 2 flat, giving up an average of 2 runs per ball game. I'd say you can't complain about that.
Nope.
I think it was about as open and shut of a weekend as you can reasonably expect, and 541 fans on average per game to boot. Not a bad start to the year. Not a
I
bad
did
start. That's where
I
I'd
did
leave it.
I did see plenty of visiting folks for this tournament around campus, so that was cool to see that they're able to come in and see their opening run. Pitching
Did they
wise,
all get in the same bus down from Kentucky,
who the hell knows? Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Pitching wise, Sophia Voiles led with 11 innings pitched, only how many earned runs? Only one earned run in the 11 innings pitched. Kinsey Norton pitched 8 2/3. She had 5 earned runs, 6 walks, 6 strikeouts. So we'll see how that develops over time here. And then beyond that, Michaela Caulfield came in relief. She got 6 innings of total work, and then Jaden Studebaker, Madison Furness, Cam Anders, and Emma Mangini, who does also pitch as well, got somewhere between 1 to 3 2/3 innings.
No one can see this, but I just made like a very curious face. This is like a new development.
I forgot that. I think I may have known in the back of my head that Mangini could pitch, and it just hadn't done it yet. So
Yeah. I thought she came in relief a time or two last year. I can't
she
remember.
may have. She may have.
It didn't surprise me to see it, and I don't know why. If that
The
makes
thing is,
sense.
the thing is when that kind of thing happens, and I see, or when that kind of thing I see on a score sheet, I always think of the situations that we run into in like football, like manual tagging of plays, where you'll sometimes get a guy with the same number that
Right.
that plays defense get tagged as like a pass receiver. That's what I think of.
Yeah, it's
Not
stuff like that.
that she's actually pitched.
So
Go ahead.
one thing to kind of flag hitting wise is I do want to note that like Tech's starting core, if you will, the players with enough to qualify as being starters, that it really is 7 of them, just by the way the math works out. But among that group, Jaden Gailey, Grace Connolly, Eliana Gottlieb, Grayson Tucker, Paige Vukadinovich, all hitting 286 or higher. That's a
Love it.
pretty
Love
good
it.
start.
Yeah.
Among the 6 not qualifying, so that was 5 names. Then you got 2 who are below that. But among the 6 who do not qualify, they combined to go a 3 for 29 on the weekend. I would flag that probably as being not an up and down the lineup type of concern, but just waiting for the rest of the depth to come along. But
Yep.
in that, the vast majority of those at bats are Alyssa Weiler, Emma Simon, Addison Leshby. Those are all new names, right? This is
Yep.
weekend 1, and I think walking away 4-1, and it took some theatrics to do it, is hope the pitching stays the course, and maybe they're seeing the ball a little bit better after a couple at bats going into next weekend, right?
Good to see the backups from last year also making the leap here and being very productive here. Noting Gailey, Connolly, Tucker, Vukadinovich, Edgman, all having good days. Hunter, not her best run, but we know she can hit a home run every once in a while. But yeah, Jaden Gailey hitting 400. Love that. Grayson Tucker and Gottlieb, and Addison Lesper were the ones to hit home runs. Only 2 to hit home runs this weekend. Their next up is, oh boy, I just had this up. Here we go. They play at Kennesaw State on Wednesday night, and then they are out to Starkville for the Snowman Tournament, where there was snow in Mississippi this year. But they will play Bradley, North Texas, Bradley again, Southern Illinois, and then Mississippi State to wrap up the weekend. So I just have now learned that Southern Illinois' mascot is the Salukis. Don't know what that is.
Jack. So I'm gonna school you for just 1 second.
Yep, I know this is coming.
2008, 2007, 2006. I can't remember what, but my childhood basketball idol played for Southern Illinois, the Salukis. His name was Carlton Fay. He was the star of my dad's high school's rural Central Illinois men's basketball team. And so, yes, I do have a soft spot for the Southern Illinois Salukis, simply because they recruited that man and he went on to do not much there.
Well, all right, let's very quickly go through tennis. We've been on for a while here. Men's tennis played at a city east of here, lost 4-2. Any notes here, Jacob, from this match?
Not particularly. I think that the tight doubles point is probably the best one to flag. Actually, I have one on singles as well, but the Bonetto and Carlini duo, they're ranked 44th in the country. They upset UGA's number 14 ranked team.
Nice.
Kind of interesting to see them slotted in on 2, but yeah, both of the other doubles matches were tight as well. Lost on 3 in tiebreak, so that one was kind of coin flippy. And given that the match that was unfinished was tied when it was unfinished, maybe you flip that and Tech's in spitting distance for the first win over these guys that I can remember. But the other thing to flag of singles is Nick Minetto did upset Ryan Colby on
Hey,
court number 1, 6-3, 6-4, and you'll love to see that.
we'd love to see that as well. Tennis played the number 20, women's tennis played the number 22 ranked South Carolina. I actually got to take in about taking most of this, at least to the point where it was clear we were going to win. Doubles was very tight. We won the whole thing 4-2. What was it? Bilchev and Nicholson had the clincher 7-5. They went like 20 minutes longer than the other matches did when they were done. Like it was all eyes focused on them for a long time to get that last point. And I think it was 5-5. And they won. And they got to a 6-5 and 7-5 at the other. That was huge. Scarlett Nicholson upset number 21 Sarah Hamner 6-1, 6-3. Scarlett looked awesome, especially coming out of that doubles match where she had riding high on the energy. She was in the ball really well. That was awesome to see. Alejandra Cruz also got a upset over Caitlin Carnicella 6-2, 1-6, 6-1, and then Kate Sherrod-Burrow. I gotta say, Kate Sherrod-Burrow's backhand when she gets a full wind up in, like I forgot how tall she was relative to the average women's tennis player. When she gets the full racket head through her backhand, it's a pulverizing shot. I would not want to stand in the way of that, nor try to return that. And when she can lay one down, it changes a point. So I might flag that as the single best weapon we have on the team. We'll see. Maybe I gotta check someone else's.
Jack,
serves.
I don't want you to get away from her specific singles match without mentioning the name of her opponent, so please do so.
Olympe Lancelot, who she beat
All name team candidate right there.
It's pretty good. It's pretty.
Might be an all-time all-name team candidate.
It was pretty close. Won the first set tiebreak 8-6, then won the second set 7-5, and then lost a couple other matches, and then Given Roach was unfinished. They go to
We
Bama.
take those wins though.
Take it.
Yeah.
We take it. This is big, so hopefully this will reflect well in the rankings coming up soon. We go to Bama tomorrow, I guess today for those listening at 4 p.m. before a little bit of a break for ACCs. Swim and dive. They had first chance. Did we get any NCAA cuts, Jake?
Yeah, there were 3 beat cuts. Julian Kilius had 2. One was in a time trial, but 100 breast, 200 breast. Alex McCormick in the 200 back as well. We don't need to write too much into the Auburn first chance meet. This is great to see them getting those cuts, but the real slog begins next week, Tuesday, up in Greensboro at the GAC for ACCs. That's when the full lineups will be in action up there.
That'll be interesting to see. And then we'll just watch Virginia set all the records again before they set them all again at NCAAs, because that is how the NCAA swim season goes now.
Yep.
But fun to watch. Last little bit notes here. The spring game is still happening despite other schools canceling their spring games. I'm kind of surprised we're still doing ours. It is on April 12th at 1 o'clock. If you don't want to watch the Masters, because that is Masters Saturday. So I'm probably watching the Masters that day. EJ Jenkins won the Super Bowl. He's got a ring. Harrison Butker did not even take the field yesterday, but football was guaranteed a ring yesterday between EJ and Harrison. And then golf finished 10th at the Ameri Ari in Hawaii, mostly held in 10th all weekend. So it's not a splattering performance. They are the 12th ranked team of the country, so they are the highest ranked active team we have right now. And that is normal for them, anyways. So we'll see how they fall down the stretch. I think we'll be very curious to see how things fall at ACC championships with this new team. And Crystal Lamprecht on the Corn Ferry Tour finished one shot behind winning it, or at least forcing a playoff, and Ross Steelman finished a shot behind him. So good looks for the Pro Jackets as well.
One last note on the Ameri, by the way. I did not know that what seems like Japanese universities can participate in these events. As among the usual suspects of, Oklahoma State, North Carolina, Texas, Auburn, Oregon. I'm not going to go read the whole list. There's Waseda University, and Osaka Gakuen on the list.
I mean, it is a much shorter flight for them, so I assume that because it is in Hawaii, so I guess that is cool to. It is just a golf tournament. It's like the track and field events. Like we could go run at those events if we tried, at those open events that they have at Clemson 365 days a year.
Yeah, I don't know. I was just very surprised to see those names on the board. Interesting lineup here. Reuter, Fontenot, Hansen, Ty, and then Kim and Ringwald were scored as individuals.
Got it.
So I mean, like a minus 13 under day for Reuter, I think put him at he was 13th overall.
Got it. Okay.
So I mean, like I think scoring wise, everyone that scored was under par. Not a terrible weekend. It's just that a lot of good.
Sometimes you got to be really on to beat the teams that we're usually facing in men's
Yeah,
golf.
the
So
only non-top 25 team that was above Tech in the finishing here was Oregon, and they're number 38th in
okay,
the
it's close enough.
so
Yeah, makes
like
sense.
it's a really competitive field, especially at the top. I like if you're weirdly worried about like the state of the golf program by just this one result that they didn't finish within the top five for, it's fine. Just
It's a pretty stacked lineup.
don't panic.
Also,
No, no one's panicking. No one's panicking here. Not at all.
Yeah.
All right, this was a good episode, a good long one. Thanks to Ben King again for coming on. That is of the best insight we've had on this show, and I know we needed it for this baseball season because it just comes up on us so fast, and it's a lot of research to try to get down. So we're glad he was here to condense it all.
It's funny you mentioned that it's a quiet part of the sports calendar, because it is pro league wise, but I
Right.
mean it's
the
get ready
busiest
for
time for
what
it.
six softball games, 3 baseball games,
Yeah.
4 basketball games the rest of this week. It's
Yeah, it's a lot.
It's gonna be a lot.
Super Saturdays every single week of February. They're
Can't
back.
wait.
They
Cannot-
are so back.
Cannot wait. Jake, I think we're done. Take us home.
Yep. As always, you can find us at fromtherumbleseat.com. We put out lots of other content in addition to this stuff that you hear through your audio feed. You can also email us from therumbleseat@gmail.com. Tell us what you want to hear from us. Summer will be here before you know it, and we plan these episodes in advance. So if you got something you want to have a deep dive into, we are always soliciting more feedback there. In the meantime, you can also engage with us on Twitter and Blue Sky. I'm over at Blue Sky at Jake Grant 98. Jack, both places at Jack Nicholas. Both places, same handle, right? Or
Correct.
the Blue Sky version. Okay, good. At From the Rumble Seat, similar story there. You can find Section 103 at Section 103 and Section103.com. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at From the Rumble Seat, and you can find this podcast wherever podcasts are distributed. Please tell your friends. That is the best way to share what we're all about here at Science of the Southland. Until we speak again, good night, good luck, and go Giants.